I'm not called to micromanage his calling. I'm just here to support it.
Wow.
And so I've never tried to put my assumption or my view of God's calling onto his life. I'm here to support God's calling in his life.
If you're just only preaching or studying for people,
yes,
that is where you get so dry.
I had a really, really clear dream and a clear path and a clear destination, and it completely changed. And I just had to keep believing that God was going to bring my dreams back, or that he was going to change my dream to be like, this is what I want to do.
Hey, I'm Mariah. I love music. My husband's a subpar drummer in a failing rock band.
Well, like a huge part of marriage is believing in the other person's dream, believing in the other person. And I'm like, if he's a bad drummer, can I date him? Someone told me the other day, like, yeah, you kind of seem angry when you sing. I'm like, I am. I'm just like, it's more that I just believe it to my core. And I just like, I'm going to do whatever it takes to usher in God's presence.
Hey, it's Rich, and you're listening to the Mature Me podcast, weekly content devoted to all things life, leadership, culture, and faith. Thank you for taking some time to tune in. Make sure you subscribe and follow us on all our social channels so you don't miss a thing. Let's listen to today's episode.
Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to a brand new episode of the Mature Me podcast. My name is Rich Wilkerson Jr., and I'm so happy that you are tuning in today. This is the podcast that we talk about maturing, growing, getting better in life. Really, the only thing more important with who you are today, who are you becoming tomorrow? And that's what we seek to learn here on this podcast. I don't know what platform you are watching on, but do us a favor. It really helps. Like, subscribe, share on YouTube right now. We're believing, I'm just making this up right now, but we're believing we're going to break 20,000 subscribers by the end of this year. Julia's cheering in the background right now because I'm now setting goals, friends. But literally 9 months ago, we began, and there was a few thousand people that started, and now today, well over 16,000 people are tuning in every week, and we're so grateful for you. If you're watching on Spotify, we've been seeing a whole lot of listeners grow in that space. Thank you so much. Thanks for taking us to work with you, driving, putting us in your ears at the gym. However you're consuming this content, we're grateful. We want to add value to your life, and that's what we're hoping to do. One of the ways that we do that is every Tuesday morning, I take some time to promote it always. I release an email called Leadership with Rich. Really, really didactic, small, dense email with practical handles that you can use that day, that week. Maybe you're a coach, maybe you're a teacher, maybe you're an employer, maybe you're an employee. Something tells me that you're probably leading people in some capacity, and you got to grow in that. You got to get better. One of the ways that we get better is by learning from others. But as we learn, I think that we're going to add value to other people. And as you get better, well, everyone around you gets better. So go ahead and get that, richwilkersonjr.com. Julia, lots of people getting that every week right now. I don't know what the numbers are, but we should find it. Tens of thousands of people getting that email every Tuesday morning, 6 a.m., hot off the press in your inbox. We want to get that to you. But no more announcements. I'm really excited because week in and week out, we have wonderful guests that come on. One of my favorite things in the world is talking to people. If you haven't learned already, I am an extrovert, that I actually get energy from other people, and particularly interesting people. And today we have a really great guest. She's been a friend of mine for a long time, but she's actually here in Miami doing some work with us, and I'm so happy that she decided and chose that she would come onto the podcast. She's probably not a stranger to you, but maybe you don't know her by name, but maybe you know some of her music. She's a mother. She's a wife, she's a pastor, she's a singer, she's a songwriter, she's an artist. We are joined today on the Mature Me podcast by my friend Mariah, aka Goss, formerly known as Mariah McManus. Mariah Goss. How are you?
I'm so good. I'm so happy to be here in
We
Miami.
just got out of a conversation about Air Force Ones.
Yes,
and
our
she said those are
differing
very
opinions.
clean Air Force Ones.
Yes.
To which I said, what?
You said they are not clean.
They're not clean.
They're spotless.
I'm freaking out over here.
Why? They're perfect.
They're creased, they're spots. Someone right now who's like me watching the podcast is turning it off, like, whoa, I'm distracted. And then I made the joke that I feel like you wear Air Force Ones, but when you wear your Air Force Ones,
they're destroyed.
Yeah, but you're so cool. You like, they're all beat up, like paint and crap. Like, where were you painting at? Oh, I was just doing some stuff in my creative garage.
Maybe that's the LA Miami difference.
It is.
Most people in LA would wear perfect Air Force Ones and would disagree with me. So maybe I'm the black sheep.
I don't know. LA's got like kind of like a grunge vibe to it where people like, it's almost like we're so cool that part of our air of being so cool is that we don't care. It's like the other night we're talking about watching the debates and I'm like, yeah, I didn't really watch the debates. Like, who are you, Rich? Like you are above politics? Yeah. I mean, come on, I'm not going to get into the fray of that. Like the fray of that, that's like the future of our nation here, bro.
Oh my gosh.
It's the LA mindset.
That's right.
Do you agree with that or disagree with that?
I disagree with that.
You do?
I feel like some people in LA don't care, but for the most part you go and it's like, everyone's just trying to make it.
Yeah.
So everyone cares so much because they're like, you don't come to LA just to like chill. Like you come to LA to grind. Yeah.
To hustle.
And so everyone cares so much while they're trying to pretend like they don't.
Does it annoy you? Do people call you, do they get your last name wrong, right? Or you don't even think about that? Or is it just me because I've known you for so long?
Which last name?
Well, like, what is your full name now?
Mariah McManus Goss. People get Goss wrong all the time.
So, but so you dropped, did you have a middle name before?
Yes.
And you dropped it?
Dropped it.
Lost it. What can you share what the middle name was?
Mariah Lee.
Ooh, that's kind of vibes.
My mom, my Southern mom. But yeah, I love
you ditched it to keep your maiden name in the middle.
Yes, because I care, like I love my family so much. I never wanted to lose that part of me. And so I just like, I hoped, I named my daughter assuming she would drop her middle name and keep Goss one day when she decides to get married.
That's what Dawn Cherie did. Dawn Cherie, when I met her, was Dawn Cherie Lene.
Ooh.
Strong. Dawn Cherie Lene Duron.
That's beautiful.
And now she is Dawn Cherie Duron Wilkerson. Is that a common thing? Julia, what did you do?
I haven't changed yet.
Yep. Wow. Julia's married for 6 months, hasn't.
Oh,
you haven't, you're going to.
I'll do like Mariah.
Yeah.
Keep one name
Okay.
and then add this.
And Ashley's in the studio. What did you just recently? I did her
I
wedding.
have 4 names, so I haven't even decided.
Oh, okay. Are you going to take your husband's name or you don't even believe in that?
I'm going to take his name.
Okay, praise God, because that's how you get to the bank account. Hello. Rich, I'm kidding. That's not even funny, by the way, but it is kind of funny, and it's also could preach because when Dawn Cherie calls, she is Mrs. Wilkerson. And guess what that means? That means access into my life and authority. Rich, we're not going to hear about it right now. Stay in this conversation.
I love it.
By the way, God gave you his name.
Oh my gosh.
I'm going to stop. So I want to chat today because I'm really, really grateful that you're here and you're on. This week, we're actually here in Miami writing some songs because you're one of my favorite songwriters and one of my favorite artists in general. I think your voice is fierce and ferocious. I want to get into all of those things.
Thank you.
But I think that you kind of have an interesting like perspective and standpoint in life. Just we all do because we all came from somewhere. But you grew up in a pastor's home, a minister's home, not just, any pastor, like a very, very well-known your dad, Erwin McManus, is a famous author and a speaker among speakers, like a voice to the voices in so many ways. I just kind of want to maybe kind of go back to the origin story because today you find yourself doing ministry and loving the church and loving God and loving people. And sometimes you see like the opposite happen. Sometimes you see people like grow up in that. It's like, I'm going the opposite direction. I kind of want to just know a little bit about your story because I don't know just about your upbringing, how you grew up, and sort of how you've gotten to this place that you are today.
Totally. I love my parents so much. I feel like anytime I hear my dad's name, I get so emotional because I feel like obviously being a pastor is such a heavy weight and raising a family in the church can be really scary. I mean, for me, I'm like even having a daughter, I want to create this beautiful framework for her of the church and what it means to be in a relationship with Jesus and realizing how incredibly hard that it is in every choice that you make to have that in mind. My parents were not believers. They didn't grow up in Christian homes. My mom was an orphan. My dad never knew his father and was an immigrant from El Salvador, moved to Miami at the age of 9. And so, they didn't have anyone to look to. And now as an adult, I realize how incredible it was that both of them defied the odds, that both of them came out and relied on Jesus and built their family around Jesus. And it was an experiment, it felt like, in a lot of ways. Our family dynamic and the way that we grew up, I felt like in a lot of ways we grew up together, and they were navigating how to be parents and how to have a healthy family with no example. And I love the church because of them and only because of them. And obviously God. But I think growing up, it was, you're relying on your parents' faith until you find it for yourself. And the way that they handled conflict and difficult people and dangerous situations and spiritual warfare and all of these things that I feel like you experience growing up in a pastor's home, it's what made me find faith for myself. And I truly love the church because of the way my parents loved me and the way they showed me what the love of Jesus is. And I told them from pretty much the moment I could talk that I would never be a pastor, that I would never work in ministry, that I wanted nothing to do with it. And so, and you're always told that pastors' kids I was always told, like, they're bad, or like they turn out bad, or they end up hating the church. And I just never understood that because I loved my parents so much, and they gave me such a good example of what it meant to be in ministry. You see the worst of people as a pastor's kid, and you see the best of people. And the way that they handled it made me believe that you could get through it, and that God would be your defender, and that God would sustain you, and God would protect you. And when I was 21, I was face to face with the decision that I felt like God was telling me to take, and an opportunity that I could step into ministry. And I remember looking the guy in the face. My dad had told one of his pastors, like, hey, she's not going to say yes to me. She will not say yes to me. So, like, you need to go talk to her and tell her, like, we really believe that this is the opportunity for you. And we believe, like, you can step into this moment and start leading the worship team at 21. And I remember looking him in the eyes and telling him, there's not a chance that I would ever say yes to you. Like, I would ever say yes to this, fighting it tooth and nail. And I remember in that moment, I just started sobbing while I was saying no, like, there's no chance. Like, I just felt God say, like, you're saying no to me right now, not to your dad or what you grew up in. You're saying no to an opportunity that I'm handing you. And so in the same breath that I said, no way, I also said, all right, I feel like God's telling me that I need to take this and say yes and start to step into obedience. And so that changed the next 11 years of my life, and I led the worship team for 11 years. And now my job has changed a little bit, but it's just like crazy how my whole life has kind of become church and pursuing God and helping other people, live in their calling and find Jesus for themselves. It's insane to me, actually, like, thinking about it and reflecting on it, because it's been so long since I even remembered that I said no so emphatically and so strongly for so many years of my life. But yeah, that's kind of the origin story.
Well, it's really interesting too, because I feel like sometimes we look at great men and women in history, but even biblically, right? And at times it seems like there's a resistance even to the call, or running in the other direction, whether that's even Jonah or even Moses. Like, how could you use me? And not that that was either one of those are great examples of your story, but I'm not doing that, God. And then the giving in and the giving up in his presence, how he uses you. And even today, I think there's so many that look to your leadership, look to your voice. And I just watch you even in LA as I'm ever around that space. You're just such a pastor. You're so gifted, on and off stages, but I think your heart sings and speaks even louder than your gift, which is, I think, a huge compliment just about who you are. I do want to kind of like go back just a little bit further, because growing up, like, you always believed in God. And why was there a no or even a resistance? Like, yeah, maybe I believe in God, but I'm not doing that. Yeah. How did you know you could sing? Yeah. You see what I'm saying? Like, all before that 21, a little bit just going, what was that like? You grew up in LA. You grew up, I think, did Mosaic exist all those years you were growing up? Did you go to church every Sunday? Did you have to go to church?
Yes. I mean, I don't think there was ever, my parents were never like, you have to believe this and you have to do this. And they were not, there's a very like free flowing sense of authority in my house. Like there is very strong boundaries and there was a lot of rules growing up, but also it was very much about discovering our strengths, our talents, our faith for ourselves. And so, yes, while I went to church every Sunday, they never pushed any sort of religion or relationship on me. I remember very, very vividly finding a book about Buddhism in our house. I don't know why, but I read it and I was like, I think I'm Buddhist. And I told my dad, I was like, I think I'm Buddhist. Is there a reason I shouldn't be? And he just was like, why do you feel that? What about reading this made you interested? And just processed that with me.
Wow.
And I think I was Buddhist for a day, and then I was like, okay, never mind. But processing those thoughts and trying to navigate my own beliefs or where I stood was so valuable for me because I never felt pressured to be anyone or to be anything. They really, really took being an example as the biggest way to speak to my brother and I. And both of us have devoted our lives to building ministry. And I take that as a huge reason because I was able to find it for myself. And I found it at a very young age. I think I was like 8 or something. And I was baptized. I told my dad I wanted to be baptized. And ever since I was 8, I never wavered in my belief. I've struggled with God endlessly, but I've never wavered in his reality.
Existence and truth that he's there.
And that was so huge. And I feel like the same in music. I was given so many opportunities to just figure out what I love to do. My dad, when my brother and I, one Christmas, I can't remember how old we were, he just bought us a bunch of instruments. We're just really into music, and he was like, he made it a competition. Whoever can learn the instrument the best gets it. It's their instrument. And my brother and I are just so competitive. So we were like, these are all going to be mine. So we literally learned every instrument. And it just began this love for me. Like I remember just sitting in my garage for 8 hours a day writing music. Like you couldn't get me out of there. But I am the opposite of you. I'm extremely introverted. For me, writing songs and being an artist is very counterintuitive to me. I don't like to be on stage. I don't like to be in the middle. And so I was like, I'm going to be a drummer and I'm going to write the songs and I'm going to give them to the singer and I'm going to write all their music, but I don't want to be in the front. It's not going to be me. But I was trying to make sense of how am I going to do this music thing and write songs and be in the background or be behind the scenes. I didn't really know that songwriting was a thing, a career that you could have. And so my dad was like, hey, I just got to be real with you right now. Who do you think is going to sing these songs that you're writing? You're writing 8 hours a day, the second you get home from school, the second you wake up in the morning. Jeez. And he's like, you got to sing these songs. These are coming from you. And anytime something comes from you, it sounds more authentic when it's being delivered by you. And so he said, give me 1 year of saying yes. Anytime that I ask you to sing, just say yes and see if it can help your self-confidence.
Wow. And
your belief in the songs that you're writing. And so I gave him a year and I would try. I just remember in the living room during small group, he'd be like, okay, Mariah's going to share a song. And I'd be like, what? And then I remember one time he took me to Ireland with him, 5,000 men at a men's conference. And he told the production, my dad's every production person's nightmare because he'll just change everything at the drop of a hat. But he was just like, hey, my daughter's just going to sing a song real quick. And I was like, no, she's not. No, she's not. But I did it because I committed to a yes for a year, and it completely changed my view of music and songwriting and my ability and my gifting. And man, sometimes it just takes someone to believe in you and be like, hey, you just got to get over it. You just got to get over it, which maybe was intense for an, 11-year-old, but I appreciate it so much because I feel like it changed the trajectory of my life.
What a great dad.
And my ability to believe in what God has given me. And So yeah, I feel like it was just very open-handed as a kid. Everything, faith, things that we were interested in, everything was fair game. Like my parents were just, and I can't imagine now being a parent how incredibly hard it would have been to watch your kids go down different paths or question different things or whatever, but it just never felt, I never felt pressure. And they just continued to love me and show me Jesus and show me faith. And it was a no-brainer for me. Once it clicked for me, I was like, this all makes so much sense.
Do you think sitting there in that garage 8 hours a day writing songs, you would sing those alone to yourself? Was there self-awareness or an ability to go, oh, my voice is good? Like, is that very clear to you at that age? Or it's more like, no, I needed to have my confidence built. I need to hear my dad say it was good. Did you know it was good? Was there fear wrapped up in that?
Oh, yeah. Yes. I think for me, I think as a kid, you like go to school and for me, I fought school so much. I didn't love it. I felt like conventional learning was like so hard for me to absorb. I love learning and I love just so many parts of school, but I didn't love sitting in a chair. And so things that felt like they should maybe come natural to me didn't. And so all of a sudden I find music and I'm like, there's nothing that I want to do more with my time. I don't want to see friends. I don't want to go play outside. I want to just sit here and like play this piano and play the drums and listen to music and write these songs. And so I think for me, it was like, oh, I'd never felt that like click of, I've never loved doing anything more. So maybe there's something here. And then it took like, I had no fear in showing people my songs. I had no idea what a good song was, And so I would show my dad and I would show my brother. My brother is a great musician too. And we ended up like having all sorts of garage bands together and like just ruining the neighborhood with our loud music. And that was a really great sounding board. And I had people in my life, who eventually just became people that I like felt so free. Now I would be so scared to like show a friend a song, but then I was so proud of it because to me it was like, oh, this isn't good or bad. This is just like something I love doing. And there's so much freedom in that like childlike perspective of oh, I don't have to be good for anyone.
Sure.
Of course there was fear around it. I was terrified and spent like a decade of my life with severe stage fright. But
really?
Yeah. In the garage, it was like no judgment zone. I could just be who I was and do what I love. And I still remember a lot of early songs that I wrote and I'm like, that is so bad. Or wow, I had like an interesting perspective, but I just remember being like, it didn't think, is this good or bad? I just thought like, does this express the way that I feel? Does this, is this fueling what I love to do? And just like helping me continue.
Hey, I'm sorry to interrupt. I know we're having a great conversation, but I want to talk to you about something really important to me, especially if you're a pastor listening right now to the Mature Me podcast. Listen, after almost 20 years in ministry, I know what it means to be in the trenches day in and day out of building the church. And what I have learned is that lasting alone, well, it's impossible. The only way you're going to sustain and the only way you're going to grow is you've got to get around like-minded leaders. That's why we're hosting our VU Friends and Family Pastors Assembly. January 2025 in Miami. It's a 2-day gathering of training and impartation designed for you, the leader, the pastor, to lead with practical and spiritual handles. Last year, we had close to 500 pastors and leaders in the room alone, and I just know that this year is going to be even better. I want you to get registered right now. If you're a pastor, bring your team, bring your spouse, be with us in Miami, VU Church. Go to pastorsassembly.com. Let's get back to the combo.
So you're growing up, you have parents that are leading, not forcing.
Yeah.
They're an example. They're inviting you to ask questions. I think your dad is, the best in the world at that. When I'm with him, he never just lets me, he gets mad at me. Those are all strong words. He doesn't ever get mad at me, but it's just like, he doesn't want a cliche. He doesn't want just a handle. He wants to know do you understand what's in the bag of whatever it is you're saying? Not that he's against a soundbite or a statement, but he wants to make sure that you know what it is that you believe. So he does that, I think, by asking questions. And obviously he fathered you guys well and challenged you guys in certain areas. But you were a Buddhist for a day. But ultimately you always believed in a higher power in God. And it ends up becoming, I'm following Jesus. He's challenging you on that journey. As you're getting to that 21 age and you have this big kind of moment to go into, I guess, full-time ministry is probably what we'd call that. We're like, hey, you're going to lead this thing. What do you think the resistance was there for you in that moment? Just because I think people are listening right now and, you know, it's 10 years later. It's not that maybe you're always doing this from a, you know, vocation standpoint, but God has used this as a vehicle to use the gift that he gave you for his glory that's inspired so many people.
Yeah.
But even at 21, as you love him and love his people, what was that little resistance moment there that you can kind of go back to?
Yeah. I think watching pastors' kids have an interesting perspective because you're watching the good and the bad from a front row seat.
And the ugly.
Yes. And
it's a bloodbath. Hey, Rich, chill out, dude. It's not a bloodbath.
Like I said, like you're seeing the best of people and the absolute worst of people. And my dad is, maybe to most people's surprise, one of the most tender people that I've ever met. He will just believe and love and continue to pour out because he just doesn't give up on people. And so I think watching that and having a little bit of a chip on my shoulder of like, no, I'm put in the position to protect and to love and to just be a daughter and a family member to my dad. Wow. I wanted to be able to like have an outside perspective so that my parents could not just spend all of their lives like consumed by this one thing. And I would say like when I said yes to full-time ministry, it was one of the most difficult seasons of Mosaic. And so it was also a difficult decision because of the circumstances and because of what I was walking into. I wasn't walking into like a healthy team. I wasn't walking into a good, you know, worship environment. And so for me as a volunteer, I was like, this is already, you know, tough for me. And I'm trying to do my best as a volunteer to help bring change. But taking it on as a leader is a completely different issue because all of the people that you were shoulder to shoulder with are now upset with you and they're relying on you to bring change. And so it was you know, just a moment. I think I wasn't necessarily mature enough in that moment to be like, oh, I could really make a difference here. I was just like, oh, this is going to mean a complete like abandonment of the life that I've built. And I was writing songs professionally for film and TV. I was doing all sorts of things. My life was taking off in a way. My path was being, you know.
A trail was being blazed.
It was
like right or left. Which door am I going into?
And that's, I think, the biggest issue is the biggest, you know, issue in my mind was when you're saying yes to full-time ministry, there is a decision, I think, at the beginning that has to be made of, am I going to trust God in this? And for a season, it might be all-consuming. And I think that was just the wrestling of, I've seen it be all-consuming for my parents for so long, and they love it. And that was like the fire in their bones and the passion that they had and the mission that they were on. And I think I just saw a lot, and I didn't want the responsibility to have to like completely change my life. And it was a struggle. Like, I think probably the first 5 years, which was way too long to struggle with it. But as a young person, just having to make a decision to like leave certain things behind. And I just continued to remind myself that if this is the yes that I needed to give God, God is going to change my heart and God is going to change my dream. I had a really, really clear dream and a clear path and a clear destination, and it completely changed. And I just had to keep believing that God was going to bring my dreams back, or that he was going to change my dream to be like, this is what I want to do. I feel like I said it out of obedience. I said yes out of obedience. And obedience has been the theme of my life, hands down, doing it even if I don't see the outcome, or if I don't see the fruit of it immediately, or if I don't know what God is doing, just saying yes. Like, the amount of things that God can do with a yes. I've seen it in my life. I've seen the reality of it. God has completely changed my life by just teaching me how to be obedient, not anticipating the outcome or knowing where he's going, but just the yes. And so for me, I had to make a decision in that moment of like, am I a yes person for God? You know, like this path, however like passionate about it I am, I didn't hear God say no to this and do that. I heard God say no to this thing that you want and say yes to me. And so it's always been for me, if God's in it, you just say yes, no matter how much it hurts as a human or how many complicated feelings there are as a person. And so I guess I just knew at that age that like yes was going to be my answer. And I struggled with it endlessly, wrestled with God more than I ever have in my life. And I don't regret the yes for 1 second. I spent 11 years in that, like consumed, and like in a good way. I don't mean that in a negative way. Like this became my life, and church became my life, and mission became my life. And it's changed my perspective forever. And God really did change my heart to like pour out into this calling for however many years. And God brought those dreams back that I felt like he gave me as a child.
Wow.
And I was able to start songwriting for church, which had never happened in 20 years.
Wow.
And I was able to, then I saw God like depositing these things that he had given me as a child and putting them into my role and my leadership. And it was just incredible to see and to watch that evolve.
It's powerful. I think it's interesting. Sometimes you see people do something amazing or something great. And those are even loose words, because what do you mean by that? But I think we can all look at something and go, wow, that's a huge accomplishment. Or man, you did something big. And I often wondered like how they got there. Sometimes it's extreme confidence. Other times it's complete ignorance. You know what I mean? It's like sometimes these are both different kind of like, there's a lot of things I've stumbled in. If I would have known what that was going to cost me,
100%.
I never would have done that. Gotcha. And other times it's like, dude, I don't want to do this because I just know how much this is going to cost me. And God will lead us in both categories at times. The front row seat that you had is that you see the good, the bad, and the ugly. So much of it's like, God, I love what they do, and I love how God works in his church, but I know the cost of that. Yeah. And I know enough to know that I don't know all of it, and that scares me so badly. We had a friend, my friend JJ Vasquez came and spoke to our staff for our staff retreat this summer. And he gave a beautiful analogy that just ministered to me. He was like, it's funny joining staff at a church because most of us all join staff at a church from a consumer mindset.
Yes.
We love going to church. Church is awesome. Wow, I love the music. I love the speaking. And then you join staff, and guess what? Now you're in the kitchen. And you've never gone to your favorite restaurant and gone, oh my God, I love this restaurant. I love it so much. I want to work here.
Yeah, totally.
No one does that. They just go and they consume and they eat there and they bring their friends there. But very few cross over and say, now let me get in the kitchen and start. Well, you get to the kitchen at a 5-star restaurant. It's going to be a little bit insane back there.
Yes.
And there's a level of church where it's like, not that it's supposed to be toxic or dysfunctional, but it's a different intensity and it's going to cost you something differently. And I think what I would admire about you as you're even sharing that story, and people that are listening right now, is that sometimes we operate in ignorance and sometimes we have to operate in extreme confidence. Yeah. I don't know which one is easier. And sometimes I'm like, God, all right, you told me, I don't even want to know. I'll just find out day by day. Other times it's like, we're so hesitant because we're too aware of the price that we're about to pay. And I think a lot of that is in front of you. But as you did step out, man, look at the great things that God did in you, and then look at the great fruit that God brought about from your life and from your simple yes. I was thinking, just even as we were getting ready to talk today, like that MSC record, that first one that I heard that's got like Tremble on it. Man, there's so many songs to this day that I think I used to write you back then, or I used to, every time you guys would post, I'm like, this is my favorite song, this is my favorite record. And I wasn't making fun of it. I don't know how we define favorite records, but if it's based upon consumption of hours, I'm one of the number one fans of MSC, but just such beautiful songs. I remember that one song, what's that one? It's I'm Not Afraid.
Not Afraid. It's called Not Afraid.
Sorry. Yeah. But when you start coming in on that freaking bridge, there's like this force and this anointing. Was that type of authority, now I'm a little bit dense into some art, that guttural, growl, vicious righteous anger thing that I hear in your voice. Was that in your art before too, or is that something that worship brought out? And I know maybe I'm a little bit deep for those that are like, what are you talking about? Mariah's an amazing singer. She started writing. She did 8 hours a day in the garage. But a lot of the music before was just, I'm not saying it's less than, but I mean, you now are writing worship music for the church.
Totally.
Just as an artist, like you're doing a lot of different things even today. Did that access some stuff that you never had access before? I'm trying to land on a little bit.
Yeah, I think I always wrote very emotional. I mean, I think my parents would maybe describe it as angry music as a kid. And I don't know where that came from. I think I don't know
LA,
if it's,
man.
if it's, yeah,
I'm sorry,
it's LA.
sorry.
I don't know if it's
Sometimes I feel like
sing
don't have a heart. Okay, Rich, we're not doing that right now. Keep going.
karaoke.
Yeah, sorry. Just that's Under the Bridge by Red Hot Chili Peppers. It's Anthony Kiedis' story when he was strung out on drugs, and he wrote about the city. You got to keep up with these.
That's Jake's favorite band.
Is it?
Oh my
We're
gosh.
Talk about that in a moment.
Yes, he loves it. What was the question? I got so distracted by your
I'm
beautiful
wondering,
singing.
God used your art at a high level for a lot of people. I'm also wondering, as an artist, did worship, starting to write that and apply yourself, you used the word consumed a second ago, and I don't think that's a bad word at all. I think that there's these beautiful moments where we're all consumed.
Yeah.
I'm giving every fiber of who I am. When you lead from a song, I believe that you believe what you're singing. And we could talk about that for a moment. I think that one of the greatest gifts a minister or a speaker can do is going, I believe what I'm saying. I forget about eloquence. And do you believe it? And you make me believe. Was there some part in that artistic format that was unlocking things that had not been unlocked in you before? Was that gift of that, was that there before and it was suppressed, or was that always there? I don't know that part of your story.
Yeah. No, I always wrote very intense emotional songs. My mom was very concerned about me for a period of time. Even as a young kid, like starting writing music, it was always, I think as a kid, I always felt like I was absorbing. I don't know if it's birth order, like being the youngest and watching my parents and my brother and my sister go through so many emotional hurdles, but not knowing exactly what was going on. I absorbed the emotion, and this is a very LA word, but the energy of the home. And not that it was bad, but like if my parent, something's going on at church, it's like I was too young to understand in words.
Yeah.
But I understood so much in feeling, and I just began to absorb. And it was like things that are going on with my friends, I absorbed. And I just like collected all of these stories. And I'm such an observer. I will sit back and watch and not say a word. And I think that became, in a lot of ways, like the fuel and the catalyst for songwriting in my head. It was like, okay, I'm feeling all these things, and I'm experiencing all these people feeling these things, and my brother's sad, or my friend is having a hard time, or whoever, and I'm gonna just take these things and I'm gonna write them. And I think that it's always been for me about absorbing my surroundings, and I think it just translated differently in worship. And for me, I believe every single word that I'm singing. I am so incredible. I'm not present in anything. I'm always in my head. I'm always thinking a million things. But when I'm worshiping, all of my attention is on Jesus, and I'm trying to absorb the movement of the room, the movement of the Holy Spirit in the room. And to me, like who God has been to me is incredibly gentle and kind, but also is like ready to go. He's ready to fight. He's ready to like fight for people. And I've just like watched God so radically transform people that to me, I'm like just on my toes, ready to go with God wherever he's going. And I think that's, like I said, someone told me the other day, like, yeah, you kind of seem angry when you sing. I'm like, I am. I'm just like, it's more that I just believe it to my core. And I just like, I'm going to do whatever it takes to usher in God's presence. To like, I don't want to waste a second when I'm worshiping. I don't want to waste a second that I have in a moment where people don't know Jesus, or where people are calling on Jesus or needing something from Jesus. Like, to me, it's life or death. Like I've seen, like God has completely, radically saved me time and time again from depression or anxiety or whatever. And I've just seen it. like over and over again. It's just so incredibly intense for me. And so I think it just comes out naturally in those moments. And I think I tried to dim it at the beginning to like fit people or to like appease people or, just to like, I don't know, make people like me. And now that I'm older and as I've done
and
it.
more mature.
Now that I'm so old. Over the years, I think I've just felt God like release something in me that I'm just like, I'm not here to make anyone like me. I want people to like me. I'd love for people to like me, but like, I feel like God's gifted me for something specific and I'm just really trying to like walk in that and not be anyone else than he's like asking me to be.
Well, I think it's evident. I mean, I've witnessed and watched and we've gotten to serve together in lots of different spaces. And as I've already said, I just think that you do that in such a powerful way. I do want to kind of talk about the art side of it. I have so much respect for songwriters, for writers in general. I think there's so many different mediums in how we can put our words out into the world. And I think God's called me to lead and to build community. And one of the ways I have to do that is through words and communication. I take what I do really serious. I don't take myself very serious. That's kind of language that I would use a lot. Okay. Like I take what we do very, very serious. But if I take myself too serious, I'm going to be a wreck all the time. And I love preaching. I think with what I do, like every week I got to write something. I got to deliver it. And my friend Stephen Furtick one time told me, he's like, you got to kind of have a funeral for your sermon before you even give the sermon. In the sense that you give it and like it costs you so much and you scatter it out there, but you got to do it again. Yeah. And if you are, how you interact with it and how you think about it, I'm kind of going deep for someone who's maybe listening, like, what do you mean? But like so much of the sermon feels like me. Yeah. And then it's over. And then I got to do it again. And if I have an unhealthy relationship with it is what I'm trying to get to, I can feel like I'm being used in a negative way. I am being used, but I'm saying I can feel like cheap or thin or all I am is that. And then I can fall into this idea like, oh, they didn't like it. Yeah. Or they did like it. And then my identity's wrapped up in it. And so that's what I mean by a little bit. It's like, hey, I'm going to give this thing and I got to keep it moving. And I love preaching. I actually I'm in a space right now today where I'm kind of like in love with the process again. And that comes and goes. Maybe by the time this airs, maybe I won't be there. What I really love about songwriting though, and I'm a very amateur songwriter, as you would know firsthand. Amazing. But what I think is really cool is like a message. Like I preached a couple weeks ago, when deliverance isn't enough. Okay. And the premise of the message is that people always pray for like, God, deliver me, deliver me. But what happens if he delivers you, but you haven't ever been healed? Well, you go right back to the thing that you were in bondage to. I think that's kind of a cool thought. It's Samson, and I actually really like it. It's still kind of stirring in me, but it's gone. Like maybe I get to preach it again somewhere. Maybe somehow that fits into a context, but it's on YouTube. Maybe someone hears that. Maybe that ministers them. I'll trust God with it, but it's gone. But a song like Good Time that we wrote, we still sing it at church. Or Use Me, Lord is a song that was in my heart. I
love that song.
There's something cool about it, I guess a song I'm trying to say where it feels like it's got maybe a little bit longer of a shelf life, where there's songs that you've written that maybe you go, this is the best thing that I wrote, and maybe no one listened to it, or maybe it didn't spread, or maybe they didn't scale, maybe everyone didn't listen to it. But there's other songs, I don't even know how you feel about it, but something like Tremble, where it's like, hey, Mariah, let's ask you about, and we're going to ask you about the song. Can we just talk for a moment about the interaction of that, like just songwriting? You've been writing for all, back to the garage, is there something you go, that was really dope and no one knows it's dope, but I still know it's dope. I heard a comedian one time go like, this is really funny, but no one thinks it's funny, so I guess it's not funny, but it is funny, like there's a weird thing where, I don't know, I just want to talk about that a little bit from the art standpoint of how you keep showing up to it, and I do want to talk about Tremble a little bit. Does any of that make sense? It's a lot there.
No, totally. I love what you said at the beginning. I think one thing we teach our younger songwriters at church is nothing's precious and nothing is your baby. So like I think
that's what Furtick was saying to me when it's like, you gotta have a funeral for it before it even begins.
Totally.
Man.
And it's the art of collaboration, specifically with songwriting. It's like the art of collaboration is that like no idea is my baby. I'm throwing it out into the world, and if it takes, it takes. And I could think it's the best idea on the planet, but if it's not speaking to the collective, then maybe I'll save it for another day. Maybe it dies here. I don't come to any room thinking that I have the best idea, and I think that's an incredible like culture that we've cultivated.
Yeah.
It's like everyone's coming to serve the church. And so that the church is not one singular person. And so songwriting, at least
Good.
in the context of church, we don't believe it's any one person's idea. And so some people write solo, but it'll always come to the team and we'll tweak it, or we'll finish it, or we'll bring some sort of collective aspect to it, because it should represent the church. Like when we're writing for the church, it should represent the church.
Wow.
And therefore, like, it means that no one hand is on it. And so that's been a huge learning curve for people, especially coming into the team, that it's like, you just have to release and keep an open hand. Like no idea is precious, and no idea is your baby. So if it doesn't take, then it's not personal. And the hard thing is that songwriting is so incredibly personal. And so it's a beautiful reminder, though, of like we're looking at songwriting as we're looking at the church. It's all sorts of people from all sorts of walks of life, from different places and different seasons. And so we want to bring that sort of collective perspective to songwriting.
Yeah.
There are plenty of songs that I've written that I think are the best songs I've ever written that no one has ever heard. And not that we don't release them, but it's just different. And I don't necessarily I think that maybe that's a difference too in artistry, is like, you don't always need everyone to hear everything, but you need to get it out of you.
That's big,
and so
bro.
That's one thing, I love my team. I'll brag on my team all day, but we don't necessarily, we're not thinking like, how do we recreate Tremble, or how do we recreate this moment? We're just trying to create the moment we feel like God is speaking into in that moment, in that season of our life, or in that session. We're, obviously trying to make more songs that more people can relate to or connect with or sing in their churches. But also sometimes, like, I think of a song I wrote called How Do I Thank You? I wrote it when I was pregnant with my daughter. Nobody knew. I was in a session and I just felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. And we were going through a really hard season with friendships and friends making decisions in their life. And I was going through so much pain relationally, but I had this just overwhelming sense of gratitude to God. And I couldn't make sense of the duality of it. And I just wanted to write a song about that. And there's not a single part in that song that you can repeat or that sings over and over again. You can't build on it. It's one of my favorite songs I've ever written. And for me, I'm so grateful, even if no one ever hears that song, that I wrote it, because I felt like it was a real, true conversation of God pouring into me and trying to help me make sense of the situation that I was in. And, I think that it's okay. I think that's part of artistry, and that's part of the gifting, is that like not everything is for everyone. Not every song is for everyone. Not every moment is for everyone. And sometimes you're speaking to a smaller group of people. Sometimes God's just speaking to you and you got to get it out of your system and you need to share it with somebody. And I think that's a beautiful thing about music, same as art, same as fashion, and in any sort of, medium, is that sometimes you just need to express it. And that's the way that God is, gifted us to express it.
Well, and I think also like in the medium of preaching, for instance, like if you're just only preaching or studying for people,
yes,
that is where you get so dry.
Yes. Yeah.
It's like if I don't have, and I'm not trying to be impressive right now. It's actually like those that are listening that are in the ministry, like they know this, that when you're just studying your Bible to go share what you studied, it robs the joy out of it. I've been there. I'm not, like I've been there.
Yeah.
But I'm learning over and over again, like how important it is, like going, oh, wow, I got a revelation for me.
Yeah.
Oh, I wrote a bar that I did not share that Tuesday with anybody at the staff, or I didn't give it. It was actually like God spoke that to me in my journal of this. Like those things become such a great gift.
Yeah.
And it's also how we, I think, begin to operate and minister out of the overflow.
Yeah.
I do think it's also a great gift from God, those of us that have given our lives to trying to help people connect to Him and trying to use our words. I listen to your dad speak. I was like, dude, I'm so far from the starting line of where this guy's operating from with this gift. And so I think it is an awesome moment when God goes, hey, I'm going I'm going to use this to touch a lot of people. I think it is. I don't think we should be motivated by that, but it's really, really humbling. And sermons, that's like I'm saying, they come and they go, they're gone. Don Shrew's writing a book right now. It's a perfect example. And it's like, I'm reading this stuff. I'm like, this is going to live. Like, what a beautiful gift. And what a beautiful gift. This gets to live, these thoughts that you have, these words that you have. And you've written so many songs. What is it like to have a song like Tremble that, is it a decade now later? Is it 8 years later that like people still sing?
Yeah.
It still ministers to people.
Yeah.
Maybe talk about how you wrote that song and even what that feels like as an artist to go, that's not that you're identified, not that you're defined by that moment, but it's a cool gift, I think, from God to say, look at that.
I think it's another moment in my life where I couldn't see what was in front of me. Like we wrote the song. It was one of our first times in Nashville. We'd never experienced writing with people outside of LA. You know, one thing that we really pride ourselves in is like, we love our city.
Yeah.
Like I know that you feel the same way. You love Miami. You want your music to be representative of the culture that you're in and the environment that you're in. It's so uniquely VU and so special to what you guys do. And I feel like the same way with Mosaic. It's like LA is like in our veins. And so we were like so hesitant. We're like, we're gonna go to Nashville, we're gonna write these songs, whatever. And it was a great session. You know, I don't think we walked away being like, we just wrote the song of the century.
You didn't. That's what I want to hear. You didn't.
No. We were like, this song's cool. Like, this song is great. But there were so many other things happening and so many other songs that I was excited about that I was just like, it's just another song. Like, maybe it'll make it. And I remember emailing the song to like our manager and my dad. And I was like, here's the song we wrote. I don't think it'll make the album. So it's so wrong.
I love stories like this, by the way.
My dad called me, and my dad, like I said, incredibly open-handed. He will not tell, like he wants to inspire people to do the right thing. He does not want to tell you the right thing to do. So I can count on my hands how many times he has told me what to do. He told me, you have to put this song on the album. You're not seeing clearly. This is incredible. Like, this is unbelievable, and it has to be on the album. Everybody on our team was like, this is like unbelievable. I don't know that you're seeing it clearly. And I wasn't. And I was like, okay. That was the first time I was like, okay, you know, when you're part of the inception of something, you know, you hear something over and over again, especially in a songwriting session, you can think something's great, but you don't necessarily know the impact it's going to have. And I think that's a really, really fun, like game, like it's feels very like risky about worship songwriting is it can feel amazing to you in a moment, but if it doesn't hit in the room, like what you're saying about comedians, it's like if people don't think it's funny, then it's not funny.
It's not
like
funny.
You can think something's amazing, but if people don't connect to it, it doesn't work in a corporate setting. And so
you're serving yourself, you're not serving them.
100%. And so we played it that week. We had a midweek service where almost every week we play new songs. We just write a song that day and play it just to like get in the habit of like putting ourselves in a situation to figure out what works. All of us were really, really green. Like none of us, you know, had written songs very long. None of us had been worship leaders very long. It was just like, we just got to risk it all. This is sink or swim territory now, which I think completely changed my life too in terms of ministry. Having the freedom to fail is massive to the success of music and just feeling confident as a leader. But yeah, we played it, and it was another moment of, okay, I think I was underestimating the impact that this song can have. And I almost had the opposite perspective of like, oh, this is good, but it probably won't work, as opposed to like, this is amazing and it doesn't work. But yeah, it just was a moment where we were like, okay, this is something special. And and we're not having the perspective of like, this is gonna blow up. This has done something incredible in the room, and like that we haven't experienced in our songwriting yet. Because it was, I think, our second album. So it was like maybe a year into starting MSC and like starting songwriting.
Yeah.
So it was very quick into the process. And so it took about 3 years from like starting to sing that song for anyone to like really hear it or play it in their church.
Really?
Yeah. So maybe 2 years. So we had been playing it for a long time before like radio and before people were singing in their churches, before we really knew any sort of impact. which we found like worship music can tend to be around for a long time before. Obviously, it's like, how are people going to like adopt it and then realize that it works in their church the same way we experienced writing it and introducing it to our church. Like, it takes time, I think, for all churches to introduce songs and to find things that work in the room and connect to their congregation. But yeah, it was a complete, not shock, but it wasn't what I expected.
I was going to say, and I love stories like that. Those are the best stories ever to me, and they give me a lot of hope in life. But Jesus, you make the darkness tremble. Like, that's a bar. Yeah. It didn't feel like a bar when in Nashville when you heard it?
It did.
Did it hit you, or it's like you just write some stuff that hits you? Like,
I knew that
Jesus, you make the darkness tremble. Like, I wish I would have said that at some point in my life.
It did. It was great. Like, it was great in the moment. I think I was still learning, and I was new, and I was navigating, taking this like life that I had in songwriting, mainstream songwriting, to worship and figuring out like, I kind of knew what hit in this world that I had before, and then learning like what people actually connect to. And our church, like, I think being in LA maybe, and having so many new people every week. Yeah. The culture of worship has transformed a lot. And I think in a lot of ways because of the song, because it created a sense of like, oh, I can just rage. Like, I can just like sing and like scream a song and feel it so deep in my bones that it was like, oh, this is unlocking something different in like our world. And so I don't know that I had really the like maturity, like the understanding of worship music yet, because I didn't really grow up with a lot of worship music. And so I don't think I had the understanding to be like, oh, this is going to absolutely slap. Like, this is it. It took really like playing it and realizing, I had a conversation the other day that someone, at our church, Mosaic London, was like, I heard that song and then I came to church for the first time. Like, it's still to this day, it just like put words to people's faith, or they're searching or whatever. And, it's unbelievable. And I think for a while we're like, we can write other songs. Like, we have other songs. And now I'm just at this place where I'm like, thank you, Jesus, that anyone heard that song, because even for me in different seasons, like, this is exactly what I need.
It's ministered to me so many different times. The insight of hindsight creates foresight. I mean, looking back helps us to move forward. Yeah. And when we look back, we go, oh, wow, look how God works. He works in unexpected ways. Yeah. He works in things that seem insignificant or small. Yeah. And if we'll trust him and if we'll obey, he does more than we could ever think or imagine. Music is in many ways probably what you're known for to people from afar who watch you on Instagram or who've listened to your music. And music's a big part of your life, but it's not your life. Yeah. You're so much more than a singer and so much more than an artist. The last few years, or maybe even more now, I don't know, you became a wife and a mother. You are married to Jake Goss, who I love, who is in a world-renowned rock band.
Yes, he's a rock star.
You're married to a rock star. They are in the group Laney, who is every Christian kid's favorite secular band.
I love it.
Do we use the word secular? They've gone secular. Rich, come on, don't do that to me. But maybe just briefly, like how you guys met and what is that like? And then we can maybe talk a little bit about being a mom.
Yeah, life's crazy. I feel like I've said that. We've been married 8.5 years. Almost,
oh my goodness.
Yeah, almost 9.
I'm acting like you're crazy? A new wife over here. Rich, I'm a decade in. Don't give me those new marriage. I'm not Julia, okay? I'm not Ashley, who left. My God, Ashley's left the studio.
She's out of here. Yeah. I feel like on the way here, I was like, I'm not old enough to have been with someone for a decade. But yeah, we almost 9 years together, 10. And yeah, we met at church.
So you fell in love with Jake when he was still in obscurity a little bit.
Oh, Jake was living in a 1-bedroom apartment with 3 guys. He had just moved from Bentonville, Arkansas.
So you bought into this guy on the come up, man.
Oh yeah. What's actually really funny is that we started dating and I'd never heard him play the drums. I was like, this guy has no money.
Is his drumming like a turn on for you because you're a big musician?
Well, I was like, if he's bad, and this is so shallow of me, don't judge me. No. If he's bad, what am I going to do? Like,
No,
am I
for
gonna
real.
do?
What
Like,
would you do? Like, hey, I'm Mariah. I love music. My husband's a subpar drummer in a failing rock band.
Well, like a huge part of marriage is believing in the other person's dream, believing in the other person. And I'm like, if he's a bad drummer, can I date him?
And the McManuses are really big on, they don't do flattery. They're against it. So like they want to encourage, but they're not.
Is that
They're
our,
like,
like-
unless it's true, we're probably not going to say it.
100%.
We have to, if there's potential, we'll say it. But if there's not
Yeah.
potential, you're not going to get a hand clap in that direction.
No. So we started dating the
Oh,
day
didn't
that
realize you were married 8.5 years.
I saw him play for the first time before or after we had like really started dating and like kind of were like, okay, this is a thing. And thank God he was amazing. Like he was amazing.
He's
and I was like,
amazing
okay,
drummer.
we've gone over this hurdle. This is good. But yeah, I mean, he was definitely like a struggling artist. He moved here for Laney. He moved to LA for
Yep.
Laney. And put his whole life, you know, he was a successful like hired drummer in Nashville and for 10 years. And he was incredible at his craft. I mean, I've never met anyone more dedicated to something in my life. He still takes lessons. He still practices all the time. He takes his craft incredibly seriously. And he's been like that since the day that I met him. And so, yeah, thank goodness he was a good drummer because
I feel like
married him on
I
the
knew
spot.
Paulie from way back in the, I don't even know
Yeah.
all the timelines. The fact that you've been married for 8.5 years is crazy. But like, funny story about like, Paul grew up in Oklahoma, was a part of a church plant at one point. I'm like just telling Paul's information out there. He's like, don't talk about me. But Paulie used to work with Jason a little bit and
Yeah.
he picked me up for different times at the airport. I flew into LA and drove me to a couple like church things.
Yeah.
And we would always listen to like really cool like indie music. He always had like the best playlist.
Yeah.
Up until about recently, I used to be like, hey, Paul, I'm having a dinner party. Can you help throw together a dope playlist? And he would send me the best music. These days, I feel like he's graduated from me giving me playlists. I probably should just hit him for some humility. He might be like, yeah, bro, I'll still give it to you. But I feel like when the boys first moved there, I went to some like dinner at some spot afterwards and I met Jake.
Yeah.
Like at it, would that have been 8 years ago at least? Or could it have been
Probably
10
10,
years
yeah.
ago? My God.
yeah.
Rich, you're 40. Oh my God. I'm having a midlife crisis.
Yeah, 10 years, maybe even.
How did you guys meet? He walked into church?
Just walked into church.
Love you, Jesus. Thank you, Jesus.
Thank you, Jesus.
Thank you, Jesus.
I saw him from
It's been
stage.
fun dating you, Jesus, but now I found my. Okay,
It's
sorry.
over.
Yeah.
No, yeah, I saw him from stage and I was like, that guy cannot be a nice guy. I was like, he's just too cool.
Way too cool.
And I was like, and he comes alone and he leaves early. Like, how dare he?
Yeah. You judged it.
But I was like, also like, like maybe I wonder if he's single.
It's mysterious,
Yes,
intriguing.
very mysterious. So one day I just like went up to him, or no, he came up to me. He just came to like a church, like a new member kind of meeting. Just like, if you
Look
want
at
to
this
know
man
more.
of God going to new members
I
meetings in
know.
a rock band.
And he talks about it like
These are easy to find, by the way.
like he was supposed to go home for Thanksgiving or for Christmas or something, and he felt like God told him to stay. My dad was doing a series about like calling a place your home, and he felt convicted, and so he canceled his flight and he stayed for an extra week, and that's when he came to Welcome to Mosaic. And he always talks about that just being like God just confirming that this was where he's supposed to be. And we met that night, and he just came right up to me and he gave me a hug, and I was like, okay, who are you? You perfect angel. And yeah, we have some mutual friends, some of the bands that he played for before Laney. I knew some of the people and like had toured with them. And so we just had all these people kind of like circulating, and we had mutual friends. So we just like kept talking like, oh, you know this person. And then after, some games, like all, boys in their 20s, not all of them. But maybe in LA, most of them.
Yeah.
It was just.
He wised up.
Yeah, he wised up. He just asked me out. And the second we went on our first date, we knew it was over.
Really?
Yeah.
You knew this was your guy?
Yeah, pretty much.
Dang.
And I had the perspective of like, which is the first time I'd ever had like a really healthy perspective in dating, which was like, I've met someone, it's okay if it's not him, but God, please let it be someone like him. Because I just never met anyone kinder or like more in love with Jesus, more like just solid and peaceful and grounded. And it didn't make sense to me that he had just moved here, like giving up his whole life to pursue music, because it seems so counter to his just his vibe and
essence.
Yeah, his essence. And I just loved that he had risked everything to pursue something that he loved. I thought it was the coolest thing in the world with absolutely no promise that it would go anywhere. And
you really respected that.
I respected.
Kind of sounds like somebody else I know sitting across from you right now.
I just I loved it, and I was willing to be in it as long as it took. And I told God, after my first musician that I dated, that I would never marry a musician. And
you got to be careful on all your no's to God, because I think he likes it when you say no, because he's like, you have no idea.
Yeah, he's like,
don't you start
okay.
saying I'm never going to move to Miami. Uh-oh. Uh-oh, I think that's what you said yesterday.
Oh, no.
Your dad's listening. He's flipping out. Jake's like, we're never doing that. Okay, yeah.
No, but yeah, I everything that I said I didn't want, he was in the on the outside.
Yeah.
Tour, he wanted to be a touring musician. He was a struggling artist, all these things that on paper, even my dad was like, are we sure? Because he didn't meet him. And then when he met him, he was like, oh yeah, this is special.
Wow.
And so I love it because I've been there since the beginning. I've seen the shows with 5 people. And then this year I'll go see a show with 55,000 people.
Dear God.
And so, oh man, it's such a gift. I'm just so grateful, and we'll talk about it all the time.
Dear
isn't
God.
it crazy that we've been in it together since the beginning? And it's just a cool thing to be able to look back with him on the beginning of it all, and to see now. I'm so grateful that I didn't just see what I'm saying now. I got to see the beginning, and we got to commit to each other.
It's funny you're saying
then.
that, because I am not married to Jake nor Paul, but I have been a fan and have had the privilege of getting to know them for over 10 years.
Yeah.
And I even find it to be such a great gift and such an inspiration to me that I just remember those first EPs coming out, I'm too good at leaving love. I don't want to be. I thought it was the best song I ever heard in my life. You know what I mean? Just to watch the growth of something. I think having a front row seat to things like that has shaped me and inspired me and reminded me that things don't happen overnight.
Yeah.
Great things happen
Absolutely.
over time. And I want to always live my life that way. It's what today in our life is in the seed format that we think is so small or so insignificant. It's so much of your story is that. God, I don't want to be in the ministry. Well, I'm calling you. Okay.
Yeah.
That a few years later you have a song that to this day is helping start churches.
Yeah.
And Jake going, hey, I'm going to leave this well-paying job and move to LA to be in a garage band. And then like you're saying, a couple months here, it's going to be 55,000 people at one show. That's not why we do it, but it really is how God works. That
absolutely.
God says, anything I do, don't despise small beginnings, because something great's coming out of it.
It's beautiful.
I don't want to turn you today and try to make you the relationship expert, but I am really wanting to know 8.5 years being married in a town called LA, not an easy place. Married to a rock star, lots of success, touring, traveling. I think maybe some listener right now is like, oh, she has a perfect life. That sounds so easy. Wow, it's so cool.
Yeah.
But to this day, I think you guys are still sacrificing and still trying to maintain that first love, not just with one another, but with God, of going, God, what's the sacrifice you're calling us to? Your husband's about to go on a tour. You won't see him for 4 weeks. Not trying to put you as a relationship expert, but how do you keep a marriage fun, fresh? How do you guys do it? What's the difficulty, and what are things that have worked to keep this thing rocking?
There's a lot of difficult things to process. I think one thing I told God I never wanted was someone that was gone a lot. As a kid who had parents traveling and speaking and all that, I just was I just want someone to be here. I want to be the one to leave and to go tour and go out and travel and have someone home. And so for us, especially having a kid, the traveling is such a unconventional lifestyle. And at first, it can be really, really hard, in different seasons.
Yeah.
I think it was really hard when we first got married because I was adjusting to marriage. Honestly, we only dated 9 months before we got married, and we didn't know each other before that. So it was a huge learning curve of okay, I'm getting to know someone else. I'm now married in a new season of life, and you're gone, and I'm having to navigate a long distance marriage. And, I think one thing that really has helped us, maybe it sounds cliche, but so much of it has just been me buying into God's calling in his life too.
Very
and
good.
not just, I'm not called to micromanage his calling. I'm just here to support it.
Wow.
And so I've never tried to put my assumption or my view of God's calling onto his life. I'm here to support God's calling in his life. And it's obviously so much easier said than done. But for me, I just had to make a decision that I would never resent God's calling in his life. Every once in a while, I'll have to say, is God in this for you? And if he is, if the answer is yes, then no questions asked.
Wow.
And so it's always been a check-in of, is God in this for you? And the answer has always been yes. And so for me, God's in it for me too. Because part of his calling is also my calling. It's to support and to love and to nurture and to cheer on what God is doing in his life. And he does exactly the same for me, and doesn't ask me to sacrifice without him also sacrificing.
Yeah.
And so, we just make it work. If there's things that he has to be at and things I have to be at, he will help me and constantly try to move things so that we can both be pursuing. And he doesn't ask me to do things that he doesn't do. Like, we just continue to try to make space for each other's calling, and just to be constantly talking about where God is moving us. And I think not being together has created a lot of clarity in both our calling together, but that God has called us separately as well.
Yeah.
Because we're not necessarily always in proximity to each other to, to blur the lines. It's very clear that God's calling him to something that is his journey, and same for me. And there's obviously a family calling with us. And so I just continue to remind myself and to stay very, very clear about God's in this for him. And so I am all in it too. And that's been probably the strength of being in a lot of times a long distance marriage, is and he does everything to be present. I could not ask for anything more. He is a present father and a present husband, even if he's not physically present. And so I struck it rich in the marriage department, because he is incredibly, he will kill himself to be present. He will wake up at 5 a.m. and he will go to sleep at 2 a.m. to make sure that he talks to his daughter and that he listens to her and that he talks to me and he listens to me. And I've never seen anything like it.
I think it's really powerful what you're saying, and I'm hoping that right now someone's listening. We all have different stories, and we all have different experiences, and we're all in different situations. The mistake that we make sometimes is we think it's a one-size-fits-all.
Yeah.
And I don't think that we should make decisions. I think we should make decisions from maybe we can share same values. What are Mariah's values? What are Jake's values? But what a unique moment that you're in.
Yeah.
I'm a part of a community and a church that I'm helping lead, writing songs for our church and the global church. My husband happens to be in a thriving band that's growing worldwide.
Yeah.
And you said something that I see happen to so many relationships, is that we begin to resent the strength, the gift, the call that's on someone else.
Yeah.
Very interesting. That's kind of a weird connection, but I think it fits here. Is there's a story of Esau and Jacob in the Bible, and the Bible says that Esau is the firstborn. But as he trades his birthright, it says something at the end of that passage that's always struck with me. It says he despised his birthright, which was the very thing that God gave him.
Yeah.
He despised it. Despise means I don't value it.
Yeah.
And if we're not careful, the unique thing that God gives us will be the very thing that we criticize and despise.
Yeah, absolutely.
And one way you can look at it and go, I hate this. My husband's on the road a lot and I'm over here. Or it's going, this is actually what makes us unique and distinctive. Yeah. How do I lean into this, and how do we not grow familiar that we hold each other in contempt and are so familiar that we resent one another? And for me, when it comes to relationships, but when it comes to all things life is about seasons.
Yeah.
I want balance. I don't believe in balance.
No
Jesus
such thing.
does
Never
not
heard
have
of
a balanced life. The guy that I'm trying to be like is 30-year-old single man hanging out with 12 dudes going from town to town. No, this sounds like tour. This sounds like a motley crew. Rich, do not say that about Jesus and his followers. But I'm just saying, no, life is about seasons. And so with a season, I need to determine the rhythm. That's what I have to define the season so I can determine the rhythm.
That's great.
And your rhythms change. And and they're always changing.
Yeah.
And I think that you guys really pay attention to all of that. Not only are you a wife, but you're a mother.
Yeah.
How has being a mom changed you? Because I think that's a really, really
man.
big part of maturing and growing.
It really is. I think specifically being my daughter, Juno Boogie.
Jeez, what
Having a daughter has changed me in a lot of ways. I think it's softened my edges, and also it has like put a fire under me in a lot of ways where maybe I felt like, I think after you become a mother, you don't feel like yourself for a long time.
Yeah.
But I hadn't felt like myself in a long time. And so it gave me an opportunity to redefine more in the loss of a life that I didn't even have, or because I got pregnant during COVID, so I had a baby during COVID, and so life as I knew it was already gone.
Yep.
And so it gave me an opportunity to decide through the eyes of someone else who I was going to be.
Wow.
And now that someone's looking at me, what am I going to do with it?
Wow.
And, I think when people are looking at you in church, there's a lot of, you check yourself, what are people looking at? Am I someone who can really lead? Am I the type of person? Am I honorable? Do I have integrity? But then you look at yourself through the eyes of your child, the one person who will see everything, good and bad, and it completely wrecks you. And I feel like before I gave birth, I tried to make a decision of what type of woman and what type of person I was going to be in her eyes. And so it just like, where life was already crazy, I was like, I am good to be exhausted for the rest of my life if it means that I'll pursue the things that God has placed in my heart, if I'll continue to walk in the calling that he's given me so that she knows what it looks like to be a godly woman, to be a strong woman, to be someone who is confident in her calling, who is willing to try new things, is willing to risk everything, is not afraid to fail. And so it was a good reminder of, this is the type of woman I want to be, even though I've maybe lost it even before I was a mom. I'm back. And so I think that was a really good, fresh start for me. And I love it. I love her more than anything in the world. She is insane. She's got a broken arm and pink sparkly glasses, and she wears a princess dress every day. And she's completely different than me, and we just complement each other so well. We're having the time of our life. It is completely unconventional. She's traveling the world constantly, and we're just figuring it out together. Like it's just the most beautiful thing in the world.
Do you want to have more children?
Yeah. Honestly, being around your kids yesterday was such a good reminder that, like, I think every woman with one kid is like, the world is falling apart. And then you have more and you're like, okay, we can do this. So I'm like, maybe I do need another kid. I don't know. I'm like,
It's a holy chaos.
It is. No, but I love it. You guys carry it so well.
I don't know about that.
No, and you both come from big families, right?
Yep.
And it's just a beautiful thing to see present parents who are involved in like the kids don't consume you. You just bring them with you. They're on this journey with you. And I feel like Jake and I have just looked up to you guys so much in that, because we're still figuring it out. The way that we bring her with us is so different because we're not both involved in church, but it feels like that was the best advice we were ever given, is like, you just bring the kids into your life. You don't change your entire life or stop your whole life. And that's been it. And we're tired, and it is we're having the time of our life. And yes, eventually I will have more kids. She just broke her arm, so once she did, I was like, I don't think I could have another kid. I can't do this again. But
you
no,
guys have to have more kids,
We will.
because you two coming together creates superhumans, and we need more of those superhumans in the earth. Dawntree and I are about to have our fourth, as you know.
It's amazing.
I don't know. I kind of feel like 4 kids in 2025 or whatever year this is, 2024 is like, 19 in 1984.
It really is.
Rich has gone Amish. Rich, you can't even say that, man. I don't know if that's, but no, I think you're right. I would even take it a step further, which is we bring our kids into our lives, and I think the greatest gift we give our kids, and Dawntree and I really believe this, is our love for each other.
Yeah.
I think the greatest gift that you give Juno is the way that you love her father and the way that her father loves his wife. And I think that is what brings such stability in a home. Man, mom and dad are they're one. You know what I mean? Like, they really are this unit. And Dawntree and I, we laugh because it really is like It's holy chaos, but we just try to, she's flying out tonight to Alabama, and Wild, our second, is going on a date with her. And so I looked at him today and said, hey, now you understand that you are mom's bodyguard.
Oh, I love
If
it.
something happens to her, bro, I'm coming for you. He's like, yes, sir. He's 4, you know? And then
sweet.
Wyatt and Waylon are partying with me this week, so they get to sleep in the bed every night. And
They're going to live their
right
best
now,
life.
the boys have a pallet in our room. It's ridiculous. It's
I
like
saw it.
Yeah, it's a whole
the whole
thing.
team.
Yeah. I don't recommend that, by the way. I used to tell people, I'm like, don't you dare let your kids in the room. But yo, when they're yours, it's different.
Yeah,
right?
100%.
It's totally different.
100%.
All the things I taught parents, Rich, you should have never been teaching parents before you were a parent. I know. But I'm immature. Mature me, God.
It completely changes when you have a
Oh my
kid. You're like, all
God.
the things I swore I'd never do. Here we
my
are. And I'm
God.
like, how did we?
All the relationship advice I gave until I was actually married
Yeah.
for 5 years is like, you
What
know
do I
what?
know?
You know, like what?
Oh my gosh.
What do you know? I'm
know.
still growing. You're the best. I'm so grateful that you
You're
took
the
some time
best.
with us today. And there's a million more questions I do want to ask you, but we're gonna get you to come back on. I think what I do want to, it's sort of becoming a tradition around here. And sort of a fun question for us, which is, this is the Mature Me podcast. And once again, we learn so much by looking backwards. And I think even today, I don't know, my faith is being built just talking to you, like just thinking about all that God's done, and hopefully you've got faith for your future. I know you do. What's maybe an area right now, and it could be multiple areas, one area, it could be in one category of life, whatever you want, but like, what's an area right now you're like, man, God is maturing me, or I need to mature in, or holy smokes, I'm really immature in that.
Yeah.
However you want to kind of come around that. What's an area right now that you think you need to mature in?
Oh, that I need. Yeah. There's a lot of areas. I think one specific one, I was thinking back to in February, Jake and I went on an anniversary trip, went to Japan. Our anniversary and my birthday are really close together. So I just used it as an excuse to be like, take me somewhere in the world. So I went to Japan, and I felt like God gave me like a very specific phrase. And it's been, I feel like it completely changed my life. Like I have very few moments like that where like something will change you over time. But in a moment, it was like, wait, my perspective, my brain is now shifting. And I feel like it's been it's a process. So I feel like God just told me, see it through. And all of these things in my life that I wanted to do, or that I've wanted to do, I kind of disqualify myself because one decision won't get me to the end goal. And I don't know if it's a generational thing, if it's a fear thing, whatever it might be. I just felt God tell me like all these little things that you want to do, just take it one step at a time. And that's how you get to the end. That's how you get where you want to be. And I've kind of created this whole world of like one thing needs to get me there, or, doing this one thing isn't gonna get me to the end or to where I want to be. And so why even do the one thing? Like, I'll just live my comfortable life and I'll stay here and I'll wish that I got there, but I won't do the work. And so, I'm talking about, solo music, or I've really wanted to start a fashion line, or I've wanted to do interior, just little things that I've always had kind of like annoying me in the back of my head of like, no, I really feel like this is something you just want to do for fun, or that God's opening the doors to do. And I just felt like he told me, see it through, just take one day at a time, and don't worry about the end goal. Just worry about what I've placed in your path right now. And so I'm definitely one that like dreams about the future all day. I'm always dreaming. I'm always thinking in the future. And so it's been a really, challenging, maturing thing to be like, I'm going to hold what God has placed in my hands today. I'm going to honor it, and I'm going to see it through. And tomorrow, maybe there will be new things in my hand. And so that's been my thing for this year, that I feel like God's really like just helping me see and helping me mature in, is don't worry about the future that I have for you. Worry about the thing I've placed in your hands. I'll worry about the future. You just be obedient, and you be faithful with the things that I've placed in your hands for now. And I'll continue to give you more. And so that's been my biggest, I think, maturing season thing in my life right now, is just seeing it through.
It's beautiful language. And it's a very good reminder for all of us, that many times we can see out in the distance, man, that's such a big, how am I ever going to get there? And it's step by step, little by little, one travels far.
Yeah.
J.R.R. Tolkien, author of Lord of the Rings. Rich, we don't care about these quotes, man. That's how I think. I think in quotes. I think in like
That's great.
packages, but like see it through.
Yeah.
As a bar, let's go write that song right now. Rich, This is my
Let's
song
go.
in my life.
We're going to do it.
Mariah McManus Goss, ladies and
Thanks
gentlemen.
for
Put the
having
clap
me.
effect in there. We love you. We appreciate you. We admire you. We celebrate you.
Thank
and
you.
We're excited for all that you're going to be doing and what God's doing in your life. Guys, thank you so much for joining us today on this episode of the Mature Me podcast. It means so much to us that you watch, that you take the time to listen, to engage with the content. Do us a favor, share it, spread it. Leave us a comment right there on YouTube. We'd love to get your feedback, and we'll see you next Tuesday right here on the Mature Me podcast.